5+ ideas to kick your tags up a notch. Hi there, welcome back. I am Sandy if you're new, and today I'm going to be making some tags, and so I thought I would share some tips with you along the way of kind of how to add a little something extra to your tags. So I've thought of 5 different techniques that you can do, and there's probably so many more other techniques, but I'm going to kind of focus on these right now. So first off, I am going to start off with this cardstock. So this is Tim Holtz cardstock, and it's like craft card. I'll link it down below what this is called. And then the first technique that I'm going to talk about is embossing. So you can see here I've used this embossing folder and ran it through my die cutting machine, and you can see the pretty technique that's on this cardstock now. And so I think that's one easy way to add a little bit of interest to your tag. And you could also use like modeling paste and add some texture that way. So here's an example of a tag where I have used a stencil and put some modeling paste through the stencil, and then you just let that dry and you have this really nice textured look. And then you could then spray that with some ink. So like here's a couple other examples of some modeling paste I've used, and then I put some sprays, ink sprays on top of them to give them a little bit of color and texture. So the first thing I want to do is cut this tag down, or cut this down to tag shape. So this paper that you get from Tim Holtz, it is 6 inches tall, and I believe it's 9 inches. Let me just pull that out there. Yeah, so they're 9 inches. So I'm going to cut this down to a 3-inch tag. Like that. So embossing or modeling paste is a fun way to add some interest to your tag and kind of kick it up to the next level. Another thing that I like to do is ink around the edges. So you can just take your favorite color, whatever color you want to use. Here I just have some vintage photo, and you can just go around the edges and ink it up like that. But then another fun thing to do is to use either your scissors. You can take the edge of your scissors and go along the edge of the tag and just kind of rough up the edge of the tag. So you can see how that's kind of getting roughed up right there. And there's also different tools out there, but you don't need to go get a tool. But this one, this is I think a Tim Holtz one. I got it on a great deal, but it just has sharp little blades along here, and you just kind of run it along, and it will kind of rough up the edges of your tag. And I'll link this tool down below, but honestly, it really works just fine using your scissors. You just kind of go along the edges there and rough it up. Like that. You could also just tear it into a tag shape, and that will give it a really unique look as well. I want to cut my little angles off here. But yeah, inking up the edges, or even roughing up the edges with either your scissors or any little tool that you have. So you can see how the edges are roughed up a little bit. And then you can come back and ink that up And then another fun thing to do around the edges is to sew. And you can just run this through your sewing machine and it gives it a really nice stitched look around the edges as well. So here's a tag where you can see the stitching going around the edges. And if you don't have a sewing machine, you can just skip that step, or you can draw the stitches on, or there's also a lot of stamps that look like sewing stitches, and you could stamp those on. So those are some ways to kind of zhuzh up the border of your tag and kind of make it a little bit more interesting, different, unique. So we've talked about embossing your tag or adding some modeling paste to your tag to add some different types of texture. And then we also talked about inking up the edges, and you can also ink up your tag also. So with a lighter color tag, you could come in and do some inking on it and kind of give it a little bit more interest. And then we next talked about distressing the edges of your tag, either using your scissors or your little tool that you might have for distressing the edges. And then the next fun thing to do would be to add some sort of either distress spritz or, oops, sorry guys, or some mica sprays. And when you add that to the tag, you can see here, you get some pretty kind of shimmery prettiness on your tag. And so that adds a little more interest and dimension to your tag. We have a couple different colors here. And it's a real easy thing to do, especially if you're using the spritz. You just do a quick little 1 or 2 little spritzes, and that's all you need. And so I think that is also a fun thing to do. And then adding a little bit of texture to your tag. So you can either add I'm going to use one of these spritzed ones. So you could use some different types of lace, or you could use cheesecloth. We have some cheesecloth here. You could use ribbon. You could also use seam binding, or even some sari silk. So all kinds of different ways to add a little bit of texture. You could add some bling to your tag as well. And these are just some really pretty little kind of rhinestones. I picked these up at Hobby Lobby. I love adding those. And then these, I think I probably got these from Temu a while back. But I think these are pretty as well. So adding a little bit of texture, whether it's lace or fabric or ribbon, cheesecloth, a little bit of bling. So that kind of adds that nice dimensional look to your tag. So we've had some distressing along the edges, embossing. We've done a little bit of spritz. We've added some of this pretty kind of crochet lace here. And now we want to put our little focal point elements. So for these focal point elements, I'm going to be using some of these Tim Holtz flowers and little Tim Holtz people, and then some little labels. And I do want to ink around the edges on these and kind of ink up the white space that's showing on any of these. And I like this red rose with this kind of reddish tag. And then I ink this up. Another fun thing to do, I think I did it on, these. Another fun thing to do is to tint your paper dolls. So if you have any little distress crayons, or these distressed crayons, or these distressed watercolor pencils or even just some watercolor. That is a fun thing to do to add a little bit of color if you don't want it just all black and white, if you want to add just a little tinge. So I'll show you real quick. So this is fired brick. And I just put a little bit of water. I am not a watercolor expert by any means, but I spray a little bit of water on my mat, and then I put my crayon in there, and you'll start to see some of the red there. And then I just go ahead and then put a little bit on her dress, and then kind of rub it with my finger, kind of smooth it out. And it's just really subtle. You can barely see it's there, but it adds just another little dimension, a little bit of interest to the paper doll. And then you just kind of let it dry. Now you could use a little paintbrush if you wanted to, but I find just using my finger. And I don't know if you can tell the tint on there or not, but that's just a super quick way if you want to add a little bit of interest and a little bit of color to these paper dolls. So let's see if my glue gun has heated up, and I think I'm gonna put her, I might put her like up here so that we can still see quite a bit of this rose. I don't want to cover up all of the rose. Actually, I might kind of put her like that. Yeah, I might kind of have her tucked in a little bit, because I think that rose is so pretty right there. And then we can have the label. Can maybe put the label over here. So the first thing I want to do is I want to glue the girl down. So I just kind of want to remember the placement. And it looks like my glue gun is ready. I'm having so much fun making these little tags. My idea for these is, you know, they're kind of maybe on a vacation somewhere really pretty. So I'm going to kind of put that there. And then I don't want to push her elbow down because I want to make sure her elbow is on top of this. And then we'll put some glue on this bad boy. You could use your Fabri-Tac glue if you wanted. I just thought this was kind of a quick and easy way to glue these down. So I'm going to put her elbow kind of right up in there, like that. Uh-oh. Ooh, hot, hot, hot. And we'll get that extra glue out of there. There we go. And then this probably needs a little bit of inking. These labels, I think I got these from My Porch Prints, I believe. So I do want to have a little bit of bling. I kind of like it there. So yeah, so I might do that there. And I'm trying to decide. I think I want the label over here. I think. Yeah. Yep, I'm just gonna do it. Kind of like that there. And I'm going to use my Fabri-Tac glue on this label. And then I have this saying up at the top. This is in Italian, and it says, it means do what you love. That's what it says. And I am going to trim it down just a little bit. And just try to ink up the edges. And I want to put a little bit of Sorry Silk behind there. Yeah, I might do a little bit of this. This is kind of the, I think it's like called Sunset, I think. And I got this off of Etsy. It's the first time I've ordered from this shop, and I think I like it. I'm not a huge Sorry Silk expert, so you know, I don't really know if this is like good stuff or not, but it seems like it's okay. And I kind of like the contrast in color with that, and then I'll put the label on top of that. I did get my new Fabri-Tac glue in. I'm trying to use up every last bit of this bottle. Okay, just kind of put that down, and then I'm going to scrunch it up a little bit because I like it looking a little messy. And if you don't have Sorry Silk, you could use seam binding or even cheesecloth, or just whatever you have in your stash, honestly. And then I left room to poke a hole up there. And we'll put just a little bit of glue on here. Do what you love. I love that saying. And then the last way that you can add a little bit of zhuzhing up to your tag is to add either some ribbon up at the top. You could add a tab, like a whale's tail tab. So if you have any of these whale tail tabs, you can add, you know, something. Don't know if I really have anything in here, but I'll just pull one out in case you aren't familiar with what they are. But these are just little tabs that you can add up here. You could add just a fun little, like a little lace, little pull up here, like that. Or even a bigger piece of fabric. You could also poke a hole and then string some ribbon through, and that's what I plan on doing. So I am using the 3/16 size hole, and I'm gonna mark the middle here. Try to eyeball it. Go. There we go. Looks pretty good. We can add an eyelet to that if we want to. I don't think I'm going to add an eyelet. And then we could string a little bit of this Sorry Silk through the hole. I might just do the red. Let's try that. let me know if you have a favorite shop that you buy, silk from over on Etsy. I'd love to know. Here we go. And you can kind of unravel that a little bit if you want to. There we have it. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and it was at least 5 different ways you could zhuzh up a tag. You could do some embossing, or you could do some modeling paste through a stencil. You could do some spritzing, spray inking. You could rough up the edges or ink up the edges of the tag. You can add texture with either fabrics or laces. Add some bling. Get a lot of fun texture. So I hope you give, if not one of these, all of these a try. And please hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And then you can still journal on the back if you want to, or you could cover this with some writing paper, and then you can write on the writing paper. So all different ways you can use these. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye. And thank you to my YouTube members and to my patrons. Thank you all so much. I love creating for you guys. All right, bye.